TCS conducts exams in Government of India, right? The invigilators are provided by us. My aggressive thought process is that by 2030 we'll have almost 9 crore people in gig economy.
I'm very inspired by two of our customers. One company employs a lot of cooks. All the cooks have got ESOPs. Another company does laundry services. All the Dhobis have got ESOPs.
8+ acquisitions across India, Indonesia and Malaysia. Close to $100 million raised. Pravin Agarwala walked away from an 18-year career at SAP to build BetterPlace for India's blue-collar workforce. On Build to Share, he breaks down his 3-tier ESOP stack with Satish, including one tied directly to EBITDA.
In this workforce, is there any concept of a long-term incentive at all?
Attrition is north of 10% monthly, can go up to 25% monthly. So if you have 1,000 employees, you end up hiring 1,000 to 3,000 employees every year. The interview that you used to do as an HR, it's not required anymore because the agents will do the interview. The entire process is now agentic.
You were in SAP, building an enterprise grade product. Users were very different, and then suddenly you jumped into doing something completely other extreme. So what was the inspiration? Did you have any touch points where you can say, okay, now let me go to the the farthest side of what I am doing, or was there any problem that you were trying to specifically solve?
No, very interesting. Might take a minute or two to explain it. So I started my career with SAP itself, right? I worked with SAP for 18 years. So when I started SAP, my career in SAP, we were writing code in C, C++. I think the new generation is completely alien to writing code in C, C++ and managing your own memory and other things, right?
They're alien to even writing code now.
So that's where I started. All those things. Yeah, absolutely. So that's where I started. And then when I quit SAP in 2014, I was heading the cloud ERP product globally for SAP, right? So that was a fascinating journey for me and there's a lot of learning. But unfortunately, one incident happened in Bangalore in 2014, where a small girl was molested by her teacher, and she was just 5 years old. And I have 2 daughters, right? And they were of similar age at that time. And people were on the street protesting and doing all those things. And then they found that this person actually, he was a repeat offender. He had done the similar thing in past, but it was not reported anywhere. Everyone shies away from going to, FIR and police and so on. So this kind of went away, right? And I decided to quit and start a layer of trust on top of Aadhaar, right? So the whole idea was that can we create a profile of every individual, which can be used by you, me, anyone for that matter, organization and so on, to kind of do a trust verification or validation of that individual who is coming to work with us, right? To be a male, female, whatever, right? And then I quit. I started doing my research work, went all around the country. I happened to get a lot of advice and mentorship from Nandan Nilekani, who had built Aadhaar anyways. I met all the government officials. The problem was that there's no data available, right? So I wanted to start this as an NGO and create something meaningful for the society, right? But the problem was there is no data. And how do you create it, right? I mean, the government does not have the data. The data that government has, they don't want to share. Public does not have the data. Organizations don't have the data and so on and so forth. So I said, where do we start then, right? So in 2014, when I quit, 2015 early, I decided to stop this initiative because I was totally lost with the idea of what to do, right? And then this thought of click, why don't we start with background verification of every individual, thereby building some kind of data, right? So you can work with organizations will pay you, and you start also building the data and thereby create data of 100, 200, 500 million people over time, right? But then we also hit the roadblock on how do we do the background verification, which segment that we start and so on. So we said, okay, let's focus on the largest segment in the country, which is not saying that the frontline is always more or having more offenders, but just that the segment is larger and untouched and there was no significant data. We said, okay, let's start with the toughest part of the problem. And that's where the journey started, actually, Satish. The whole idea was that we create large database and start using this as a trustworthy. One of the things that we also learn in that journey, Satish, is while we are trying to create a system, or while we were trying to create a system which is kind of exclusion in nature, right? Exclusion basically means that I get 100 people, these are 2 people are having low trust score, so exclude them from the society, right? We decided that we will not build an exclusion system, we will build an inclusion system, which basically means that people who are in the system, how do we create more benefit for them, right? How do we upskill them? How do we bring loan to them, credit to them, insurance to them, and so on? Because you have to uplift the society as well, right? So that was the marriage of that thought process and the business dynamics that we saw. And then we said, okay, let's keep building a business, because we said, okay, we'll get from an NGO to private limited. So we have to also generate money and all. But we have, the intent is still to build a data-driven system which can be used for any organization, for any purpose for that matter, for hiring, for lending, for credit, for insurance, for job, for whatsoever.
No, great. I think though the foundation have started with a bad incident, I think I really like the way you framed it. You wanted to make it more inclusionary rather than, saying, okay, let's exclude some people because we had some bad history or some bad data about them.
And what will happen is that if you exclude them, then they will become even more criminals in future, right? So you are actually not solving the purpose at all.
Do you think, the system or society at large is ready for some sort of behavioral CIBIL score? Or do you think that would also fall into the problem that you just mentioned, that it will become more exclusionary rather than inclusionary?
That's a fantastic question, actually. No one really asked me this, but Satish, I tell you that society wants to have it, but no one bothers about it. It's like wearing a helmet, which is very important, but do I really need to wear all the time, right, when I'm driving? So, for example, I let's say hire a domestic help, or I rent my house out to a person, right? I know that I should do these checks, but am I really doing it? The other problem also is that do we have such data available which are reliable enough, right? So even if I want to do it, is there an ecosystem that will support me in getting this done at a speed that I want to do it, right? Because I do not want to wait for 2 weeks for the tenant to finalize, or 1 week for the maid or domestic help to be onboarded, and so on and so forth, right? Or SMEs where they're hiring people. So I think the need is there clearly. Everyone wants to have it. Whether you call it a behavioral score, because behavioral scores are very subjective in nature. How do you determine it, and so on? So we do more factual basis. We also have a system. We had a system where employers could give a feedback about the employees when they leave, right? Which is your exit. But let's say there's a very good person who works for you, and then when the person leaves, you are very angry. You give a negative feedback. Now you can't take that on the face value and de-score the guy, right? You have to take all the data in, garbage out, and then you will run into trouble, right? So we believe strongly that if you build an ecosystem which is readily available, it would become very useful, and people are looking for such a system.
Given the recent rise of a lot of this gig economy, and the fact that each one of these platforms have some rating system for their people, though it is a incident based rating rather than a individual based rating, would you guys be able to make any sense of that data? Like, for example, if Uber ratings are given, Swiggy ratings are given for a driver or for a delivery system, where each application specific, there's some rating system that business needs and they've built it. It may not be in the form of a behavioral thing, but would that data could be used to generate something better, instead of rather trying to collect all the data?
Absolutely, Satish. I mean, you can look into, when we do a profiling of an individual, there are 2 types of profiling we do. One is more on the behavior side and intent and capability side and so on. The other is the factual, like criminal record, police record, address, ID, and so on. So we look at 100 plus data points. For example, let's say I am a security guard, right? My duty starts at 8 o'clock and my duty ends at 5 o'clock. One of the data point could be that, do I always turn up at 8 o'clock or not? Do I stay till 5 o'clock? Not. In a month, I'm supposed to work for 26 days. Do I come on time or not? Right? All 26 days, right? Is my behavior pattern that I got the money on on 30th of the month, and then for 1 week I'm away, right? Might be I'm drinking, might be I'm doing something which is not desirable, right? So there are many things that you look, but you cannot take one data point and say, this is this, because when we give a rating to someone, it's also a liability and responsibility we take on our shoulder to classify in certain fashion, right? Because it should not be positively or negatively impacting that individual, because it's a personal life, right? At the end of the day, so we are very careful with that kind of reporting.
Now, from just one individual problem definition, now you have a full stack HR solution, which includes HRMS, ATS, attendance systems, and so on and so forth. So these were all like organically came about as products, or some of these were connected to the acquisitions that you ended up making?
So there are two parts, Satish. One was that when we started building the background verification in 2015, and we continued to do this till 2021, right? Post-COVID as well. But then we saw the change happening in the post-COVID era, right? The background verification business was going down because of people not on the street. And we were also looking at opportunities that we can grow as business as well as create more data, right? So we saw that, okay, if I have to create more data points about an individual, what are the data that I need, right? And then we map those data. And all this data comes through HRMS only in principle, right? There's no other way to get data. So we said, why don't we start building hiring as a solution, onboarding as a solution, which is tied up with your background verification or profiling as anyways, then attendance, which fits some more data because you can do more richer profile. Am I working extra hours to earn more money, thereby my history is better and things like that, right? So these are all natural expansion. And then we looked into that, okay, if I think about an organization, because we have to also acquire customers, right? Because if you do not acquire customers, we can't build data. And the other way around as well. So it's a chicken and egg story. So we said, hey, what are the things that the customers need? Then they said, hey, payroll is a problem. And we said, okay, payroll is something we do not know, which is staffing business. Let us go out and acquire it. And that's where we acquired companies here in India and Indonesia. So it was more like creating a larger map of what is required by an organization and how can we support that from a platform point of view.
Cool. I'll come to the acquisition a little later on. Let's try to kind of understand a little bit of the problems of employers in this space, right? I think by and large, is attrition and upskilling the workers the two largest problems, or is there anything else that they...
There are three problems that they face. Two you mentioned already. Hiring, because attrition is north of 10% monthly, can go up to 25% monthly. So
Wow.
If you have 1,000 employees, you end up hiring 1,000 to 3,000 employees every year. So that's the attrition problem. Upskilling, because you are hiring people and you are not able to get the right people and productivity goes down, or you end up hiring random people because you show numbers. Every team has their own KPIs to show, and then they suffer, right? So how do you solve that problem? And in my mind, hiring, onboarding, and skilling is one single problem, because once you have the person onboarded, all these things should be solved beforehand, right? The other problem is payroll and compliance. Payroll and compliance is a huge problem, and it's becoming bigger. The reason is that, for example, I work for 12 hours, right? And I'm paid only for 8 hours. You have not paid for the extra hours. Now with the new labor code and all, I have to pay extra hours,
Correct.
double OT, which is called double overtime, and so on. And government is also monitoring it very carefully and clearly now. There was an incident that happened in one of the oil manufacturing sites in Noida, refineries actually. They did not pay overtime, and all the employees actually went on strike, and there was a lot of issues and so on. This is all related to compliance. And then other problem is that, let's say most of these employees are third-party employees, right? They're not on your payroll. Someone else is running the payroll. You pay entirely as a principal employee. They have not done the compliance. They have not paid the PF and ESI. The liability comes to you, right? So there is no such system. So every organization looks into these three as one large problem: hiring, onboarding, skilling, payroll, and compliance. And attendance is a key part of compliance, because without attendance data, you can't do payroll and compliance in principle, right?
So a large part of this problem could still be solved by tech, or do you see that some has to be, for example, upskilling? upskilling may not really be a tech-only solution, right? From a solutioning perspective, was there any non-tech element that had to come in as well, or largely, software and software products could take care of this?
I would call it, instead of SaaS, software as a service, I'll call it service as a software, right? So you are right. 70-80% you can solve still with technology. You still need services angle into it. You can do your entire onboarding digitally now, right? We have built now agents and everything. The interview that you used to do as an HR, it's not required anymore because the agents will do the interview, the agents will do the verification, agents will do the onboarding. Entire process is now agentic, is what we have launched, right? Similarly, your time and attendance, rostering, which was mechanical, whether I will come in the morning shift or evening shift or night shift, this was done manually. This is all done by agents now, right? So this entire process is done by agents. Skilling, you can do large part of the skilling digitally. For example, compliance, cash delivery, packaging, you can do gamification, all those things. But there are physical skills also required. If I'm a plumber, I cannot learn it on a mobile device, right? I can still look at some videos and understand it, but I need basic plumbing knowledge. For example, one of our customers, they're one of the large steel manufacturing company. The skilling happens on the app, but they're already trained on that machine. Now, when they face the challenge of the machine, they have to refer something. They actually go to the app, refer those things, and then fix the problem of the machine. Right? So you cannot substitute certain physical things. Like I need to do saving, right? I need to stitch a cloth or whatever. I need to learn that on the ground. I cannot really do that without physical. Similarly, if you are doing, let's say, gig model, right? We are also one of the largest, or perhaps the largest in India today. In Asia, we are the largest, definitely. Provide the gig workers, right? People can, for example, TCS conducts exams in government of India, right? They need invigilators. The invigilators are provided by us. So everything we try to do technology, but still sometimes you have to call the people saying, hey, you have a duty at 9 o'clock, go there. Now with agents, we believe that will also become very technology driven. Agents are actually a tailwind for us. But you would need certain part which is physical in nature. Everything cannot be done digitally.
So let's switch to the other side, which is the employees or the workers, right? Now, at least from what I see and what I've heard, it's that obviously they don't have a defined career path as such. And I think in terms of remuneration as well, their remuneration hardly changes year on year or changes by a pretty small amount. Now, if I were to look at, what part of that from an employee perspective is something that's solvable by providing them either software or help through or services through software, or do you see that as a systemic problem that needs to be addressed differently?
This is something we keep debating every time with government bodies, part of the committees that I am at, and so on. First of all, it has to be solved systematically as well, right? For example, the minimum wage. The minimum wage were defined 10 years back and it continues like that minimum wage, right? You need to pay only minimum wage. And every organization starts with minimum wage only, right? And let's say you have worked in the company for 5 years and the salary needs to go up. Now you let go this person and get a new person at the minimum wage because the jobs are so easily replaceable. You do not have the fear of knowledge loss and so on, right? It's a frontline blue collar. Certain parts it's important otherwise. So that's a problem. I think with the new level code which are coming in, there is a new rule that at least every year for whatever the inflation was, that much of increment has to happen so that even if you're not increasing the salary, at least you're covering for the inflation, right? So the people are, otherwise they're losing salary every year practically, right? While the amount remains the same, your difficulties are increasing. That's one part, right? But what we are also doing is that while all those things should happen, at the end of the day, if you can do more, then you can earn more, right? So there are two things that we are doing. One is that skilling the person and also showing the person on our app that what is the path. So this is one way that we are doing. Second thing that we are doing is, like I mentioned, gig, where we are creating more opportunities for people, right? Now, if you look at typically, they earn on a front line, they earn 60 rupees uh, per hour, right? On an average, that amounts to roughly, if you work 8 hours, then roughly $500, and then $15,000 a month, right? That's a standard math, right? What we are trying to do is give them some alternative work during free hours where they can earn up to 120 rupees per hour. And for that, we skill them. So that we do through the gig platform. The goal is that how do you upskill and increase their earning per hour? Because the entire math in frontline blue collar is earning by the hour, right? Typically. But overall, I think there has to be a larger environment change, ecosystem change in terms of how do you treat your frontline and their career paths, right? Otherwise, a delivery boy stays delivery boy, a security guard stays security guard forever, lifetime, right? Keeps earning the same salaries, and then they end up doing car washing and other things, extra hours. Sometimes they end up working 16 hours a day just to increase their income, which is not right, right?
So I kind of see two distinct paths, right? One, people who are actually employed, a lot more on a long-term basis. When I say long-term, you have a yearly, multi-year, or more as even though you may be a contract worker, you are still employed. So there's some employment benefits that can be tied to it, right? And second is this gig, which is I'm looking for a job needs to get done. I get paid for a job. Type of activity, which seems to be like kind of increasing. So in this workforce, is there any concept of a long-term incentive at all?
It's there. Satish. So if you are a full-time employee of an organization, you get provident fund, you get gratuity, you get yearly bonus. Some organizations do give. If you have worked for 5 years, there is some bonus, but it's still limited, right? It's not much. PF amount is not significant. The ESI, the insurance that you get is small amount in certain hospitals, but you still get it. But in a gig model, it's pay by the hour, and it's a task. You are not an employee. You get what you get, and there's no other thing, right? The advantage in gig is that I can earn more because I can work more hours, or I can do, let's say, peak hour job, or sometimes I just pay more because it's gig. But they also have they're like entrepreneurs in principle, right? We call them nano entrepreneur or whatever, because they have the flexibility in terms of when I want to work, when I do not want to work. So people have started preferring it, right? When you are young, people like to do more gig. So you will see that more gig workers are in the age of, barring drivers who are doing Uber, Ola, and all. But largely you will see they are below 30, right? But once they are married and have kids, they also want to optimize their earning, predictability in income, and so on. Then they do a full-time job and then a part-time gig, right? So they do 8 hours of full-time job so that I know I will earn so much, and then I do additional 4 hours of gig worker. I think the world is moving more towards gig. The reason is that the individual, when they can see the predictability in their earning every month, then they prefer gig. If they can't see that, they prefer full-time job.
No, I think the hybrid approach that you mentioned, where if somebody could actually be gainfully employed, where some basic stuff is taken care of and there is some coverage in terms of, a little more long-term visibility. And then if you can extend yourself, for a few more hours, and thereby that gives them the freedom to earn more. Do you kind of see that hybrid model becoming more of a norm, or you will still see people taking either or approaches?
I think there are certain categories where it's a full-time gig, like e-commerce delivery boys. They do 70-80% of them are full-time. I personally believe for next 3 to 5 years, we will see a hybrid model more. So you will see that I'm doing a security guard job for 8 hours, and then I do a delivery boy, or I do a driver on call, or warehouse, and so on, right? So there are, or car wash and other things, right? People also do, for example, full-time job, and they do invigilators, or they do call center, customer support, and so on. So I think this will continue for 4 to 5 years. I strongly believe that with more and more and better technology and predictability in my earnings every month, because right now, let's say I want to do gig and I'm free for next 3 hours. I cannot sit idle, right? I need to get job for that 3 hours. And I need the job in my vicinity, because I cannot drive like in Bangalore. If I have to drive from Sarjapur to Malleshwaram for the next job, my 2 hours are already gone, right? So I need in that. Do we have entire technology supporting that, entire ecosystem being there? Today we do not have. But is that getting there? Very fast. So I believe that in some time we will see more of gig, lesser of, because on the other side also organizations, Satish, organizations also need to have comfort that if you are my full-time employee, you will definitely come on job because there are certain rules I have set, right? But if you are gig, you might not come. So what is my reliability as an employer? If my security guard does not turn up on time as a gig worker, then how do I open the gate, for example, or who is doing the check, or my manufacturing line will go bust, right? So they also need more reliability. I think India right now has around almost a crore plus gig workers across different formal setup. This can go up to 5 to 7 crore people by 2030 in gig economy. So this entire shift will happen from the traditional to gig. And my optimistic, or not optimistic, my aggressive thought process is that by 2030 we'll have almost 9 crore people in gig economy, because everyone would like to go in that direction.
Wow, nice. I'm very inspired by two of our customers who have given ESOPs to obviously the entire company, but very specifically in these two cases, one company employs a lot of cooks because they make a food product. So all the cooks have got ESOPs. There's another company which does laundry services. All the Dhobis have got ESOPs. Do you kind of see more people thinking on those lines in terms of and again, obviously these are also businesses where they've gone down the path of bringing these people as employees rather than doing this as a contract, even the short term contract. They're all employees, and because they're all employees, they're able to also offer this as a product. But I kind of remember I went and did a little bit of the initial, training for these guys myself, where I had to go and explain what ESOP means, what share means, how they'll get benefited, and so on. And there's an industry, by the way, apparently has like 25% attrition, and the attrition only, is getting worse, right? Do you see more people thinking on these lines?
If I think about a larger scale in India, I don't think so. So you look at large manufacturing, large retail, large BFSI and so on and so forth, they do not think. And moreover, even if you give it, you might end up giving something which is not significant enough for the person to stay back as a golden handcuff or retainer policy or whatever. There are certain places we have seen they give this as a reward, like 2 shares, 5 shares, or whatever the value of the share is.
Correct.
But not significantly enough. Is this going to be strategy that I give it to the people because this segment becomes very crucial for me? I don't think so. I don't think people are thinking, and I appreciate those two organizations that you mentioned because that's a first step towards it. How significantly they are changing, that is immaterial to me right now. At least the step that they have taken towards it is bold enough, right? Or great enough. But is this going to happen? I don't think so.
So let's now switch to your own organization, which itself is, again, like I said, pretty fascinating given the acquisitions and the integration. Now, and I'm assuming, can you just give me a breakup of the organization in terms of what percentage is tech and product people and any of the other customer-facing roles?
So we have roughly 500 plus people today across multiple locations. So that's India, Jakarta, and Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Out of that, roughly 100 people would be in technology, all kinds of technology, starting from coding to solutioning to product management and so on, right? Out of that, roughly 250 would be in sales, marketing, customer support, customer engagement, and so on. And remaining are, I would say, support surveys. Some of them are in recruitment and like that. That's typical breakup. The only thing I would like to highlight is that there are a lot of repetitive tasks that also happens, right, in the environment that we do. That's where we are automating. I hope we will continue to keep the team as it is, but do 5x more than what we are doing today from an output point of view.
So, and again, out of this, 500 people, if we look at the tech or the product part of it, and I'm assuming these are people whom any other tech company would hire, right? Because ultimately the product is, you have to generate code and so on. And again, in terms of the users for whom you are building this, was there anything that you had to build organically in terms of a product team? Because normally, if I'm building something for a Swiggy, I can see myself as a user, and even the gap between the actual product and what you engineer could largely be reduced, because you can put yourself in the shoes of the user and see it. Now here, I'm a programmer building something for a blue collar worker, and I may not even, other than the fact that, okay, I know they'll probably be a lot more comfortable with a WhatsApp type interface. Here, giving them all a bunch of buttons, options, lists probably would not make sense, right? Now, this skill, was it something that you guys did as founders yourself to put this up, or was there a product dev management structure that you could, given that you can't put yourself in the shoes of a user?
I'm loving your questions, Satish. I tell you from day one, we build a product coming from SAP, and that's the first thing that you asked me. And we build the first demo and product and slides and all enterprise grade. I went into a presentation with around 150 managing directors, CEOs of security guard companies sitting there. And I organized that event, and they said, this is the product. No one understood, because this was 36,000 feet above, all kinds of great things, but on the ground, how is it going to solve the problem of a guard, right? That was not thought through, because we were only thinking. So we changed that. I started, when we were doing background verification, we had to do physical address verification. I started doing it myself, physical address verification out on the ground, check the houses and figure out this is the right one and not, right? So we all did that to understand what is the problem. But every person in the team who is part of the technology team or the solutioning team, they have to spend time with the local people on the ground. So if I am working for a manufacturing company where there are gate entries happening, then they have to stand in the gate, work with the guys, with the vendor and so on, so that you understand grounds up what's happening. That is one, right? Second is that we also had people who were doing different type of tasks, like might be delivery and all. We also hired them and got them into product manager job. One of our product manager job
That's
is
cool.
basically a guy who was doing address verification in past, right?
Nice.
Address verification in past, and he is the guy who does entire attendance product management, because he understands what is happening on the ground, and he is able to give the inputs that we
Exactly.
do not get otherwise, as like top-notch qualified people, right? So the more than the pedigree from a education point of view, what was more important for us was the pedigree from a ground knowledge point of view.
No, that is fabulous. Again, some of us come from enterprise software background. We come from consumer software background. A lot of times it becomes a lot more easier for an engineer for to understand the requirements, right? Enterprise, you have a customer probably giving you a lot more details, and there's so much stuff. A consumer, you'll put your yourself in the shoes of the user. But this is a unique case where So did that change any of your hiring philosophy? What kind of engineers would you hire? Because I know that maybe this kind of little bit of work is required to build a better product.
From an engineering point of view, not much actually, to be honest with you, Satish. We only looked at people who can be very flexible in terms of adapting to the situation, right? Because you are not
I was
building
going to ask.
something which is known. You're not building something that happens with you. You're building something which is on the ground, right? And there might be 10 iterations that you have to do after you have built it. Again, I give you an example. We built an attendance system, right? And we were very happy. We give you a iPad or any kind of device where you have a facial recognition and do all those things. We launched at a customer and it failed, right? And every test that we did, it worked. And it failed because we realized that their attendance actually is at the basement of the building and there's no network connection there, right? And we asked them to change it to the first floor. They said, we can't change it to a ground floor. They can't change it to ground floor. It has to be in the basement. Now, what do you do, right? Because you cannot really have internet connection and still you need to do the checks, right? Or attendance capture and so on. So we had to invent ourselves again, right? So sometimes you need multiple iterations, people who are eager to learn new things and adapt it fast. So I think that is what we look at from an engineering side point of view, rather than do they understand the reality on the ground. For that, we have our own process where we send them on the ground, spend time with the user, understand that. Every engineer of our team would have spent time with people on the ground to understand their problems and then bring that in the solution.
Correct. I mean, so that requires a different kind of adaptability in the engineers as well, right? Because as you know, engineers can be, quite, rugged in their thinking, but at the same time, sometimes, especially when you do user experiences, and I think user experience would probably play a big role here. Because I was just thinking, if I were to do it, how would I do it, right?
Yeah. So for us, it's what next technology you can build rather than that. What is more important is how can you solve the problem of the person on the ground, right? Because that's the guy who is finally going to use it. And we have three types of users, right? The corporate user, from the CEO to CHRO, because they look at dashboards, this thing, that thing. Then we have on the ground the guy who is doing his attendance, salary, pay slip, leave management, and so on mobile app, learning, and so on. And then we have in-between managers, supervisor. So there are people who are highly skilled, people who are completely unskilled, and then people are in between, right? And you have to cater to all three in the same system by keeping in mind that user persona is different, the usability would be different, the way I can do is different, and so on.
So just moving to the next topic, what's your own perspective of wealth creation? Again, all startups, almost all of them have the intention of wanting to make sure that as the company grows, some part of that wealth is shared with the people who help build it. Now, one of the common instruments to share is ESOPs. So what's your own personal perspective? How have you implemented in your own organization? Do you have any specific thoughts on what would work, what would not work? And give me a little bit of a flavor of from what you've understood from dealing with the other side of the employees. Different, like I said, some of them are more focused on where their monthly salary is coming from, and not as much thoughts of a long-term incentive, except for probably to cover emergencies and so on and so forth. But almost with the white-collar workforce, wealth creation is a big part of how startups operate. Any personal thoughts on this? How would you do something like this? How have you done something in your current organization?
So ESOP is the instrument that we use largely, Satish. So we have three types of ESOPs right now. One is the typical ESOP, which is your 4 years of vesting, and people get it based on their performance, job role, and so on. We are also going for IPO in next 12 to 18 months at max. So we have also created IPO linked ESOP plan for individuals, which is for people who are actually creating a lot of impact towards the IPO and the growth of the company. So as soon as the IPO happens, it will all vest on the day of IPO, and they can exit whenever they wish to, but these are IPO linked. And third we have is an EBITDA linked, right? Because one of the key goals for the organization is, of course, stay profitable, right? So you have an EBITDA target. For example, you have to do an EBITDA of $100. If you do 200, then company gets a value out of the next $100, right? Additional value. Now, that additional value, part of that we pass on as ESOP to the individual as well, right? So we divide into two parts. One is the cash payout. So if you have done 100, then out of the additional 100, 50 is considered for cash payout formula, and 50 is considered for your additional ESOP formula, right? People value it. People value it when they see money coming in. If there is no money coming in, and I would be happy to chat with you offline on what we can do for, because if you are having ESOPs, there are three categories of people that I see. People who are in leadership role, senior executives, they value ESOP much more than anyone else, right? Because there are people who say, hey, cut my salary, but give me more ESOP because I know this company will be so big, this will IPO, and I want to create wealth rather than take some money now, right? There are second category of people who are more qualified, important role in the organization, experience as well. They have seen some value with their friends and others or themselves. They value it, but they want something to happen at some point of time, right? So they see that, okay, this company is getting liquidation or liquidity at some point of time, right? The third is people who have never experienced it. They hear in the news, but they do not know if anything will happen to them. And they currently treat this as paper only. The only good thing for us is that as we are going for IPO, people see this as a huge value because they know at IPO I would get definite exit before IPO or at the time of IPO at least, right? So people have started valuing, at least in our organization, much more now. So my conversation with the team when they are coming with their personal growth, of course, career, role, responsibility, no one talks about salary hike. Everyone is talking about, can I get some more ESOPs, right? Because they know that it will be much more beneficial. And if I get it now, then in time it goes IPO, it might be double the value, triple the value, and so on, right? So they prefer that conversation. So fortunately for us, we are at the right time of this journey. 3 years back, people were getting ESOP, but they were not sure about liquidity even. Now they're of course sure about it. So there's more motivation within the people around it. Your second part with respect to people who are looking hand to mouth, daily life, short term, they really do not care about ESOPs and other things. They do not know what will happen, what will not happen. Even if you give it, you cannot give significant that will change your life as well. The only thing they look at, as you rightly said, is there some kind of emergency budget, right? Emergency fund, right? So we also create a small emergency fund where people can apply. Let's say it's all related to medical only, but if there is some medical emergency in the family, then people pull in money, we keep it there, and then it goes by some process that we have defined, but it's limited money only. It's not like you can cater to thousands of cases, right? You can only cater to a limited number of cases.
So obviously, everybody knows that as you get closer to a liquidity event, now the trust in that instrument begins to develop much more strongly. But the third category of people that you mentioned, where who don't understand this, who treat this as a piece of paper and so on. Now, typically, what kind of questions do you get from them? Is it just that one item that, oh, this is not traded, so I can't put a value on it, and that's why I don't see it, or do you see any other nuances in how they see it? Because the organization has other seniors and other people who are probably accepting this and so on, right? So what are their primary concerns? What do you as a founder get to hear from people in that category?
Actually, the kind of questions they ask are very less, to be honest, right?
Okay.
The questions which are there right now is that I have an immediate, so this might happen after 2 years, 3 years, right? And I have a problem to solve in next 2 to 3 years. My problem is that I have to get a refrigerator, I have to get a two-wheeler, I have to send the kid to school, I have to take care of this. If it happens after 3 years, might be it's solving my problem to some extent after 3 years. But what should I do between now and 3 years, right? That's the question. I think that is the question that most of the people raise in principle, because for others who are not held to mouth as well, they have extra income, they're putting into some savings and mutual fund. For them, they say, hey, instead of there, I have control here. In the other company, I don't have control, right? I'm only investing. Here, at least I know everything inside out. I have control. So better I take that as an opportunity, right? Because they understand it. So I think that's the basic reason why people shy away from those questions. But we do give to everyone in the company to some extent. But is that something which says that, hey, because of this, my opportunity is so big, right? That's a not a line item that they really think about in principle.
Yeah, in fact, one of our fund managers uses this thesis very well, right? And almost everybody says, startup is like a marathon. It is not a small thing, and so on and so forth. It takes its own time and so on. And his logic is that we provide hydration breaks. When you're running a 25-kilometer marathon, at the 5-kilometer range, you probably have a bottle of water, and so on. So that's how the ESOP liquidity thing would work, where if you can provide these small hydration breaks, they will also get benefited at the same time, that you are going towards a marathon.
Exactly. I think that we did one such event in 2020 COVID time, because the motivation, all the issues were going down and we could raise money. So we did a small secondary at that time. In between, we have not done. Might be something we were thinking about this, to do this as pre-IPO event, but might be we can discuss this offline and see if there's something. But I like this idea that it's a hydration break, because once that happens, the energy level is back again, right? Because
Absolutely.
you're not kind of
You're replenished.
Replenished completely with all the energy, because then you are thinking, hey, something is happening. They keep saying, but now I see, right? I can see the future. Otherwise, they see only a paper, right?
Correct. Okay, let's get to the last part of it, which is all the acquisitions that you've done. And obviously these acquisitions, it's a pretty complex process, right? But you seem to have done almost like a whole bunch of them and have some mechanism and some process in which you've done this. Just walk me through fundamentally what would you look for, primarily from a people side of things. Obviously business and other things, I'm sure, is one part, which would be the first step in even considering an acquisition, right? Whether it is an additional product, additional geography, and so on. But most of the times we all know, anybody who spent enough time in the industry knows that it is people integration that usually kills this, acquisitions. You do the first part of it, but the integration suffers. So in this 10 plus acquisitions that you've done, especially cross-border, do you have a set of do's and don'ts now on this would work and this would not work? What wisdom would you like to share?
I have not prepared such a checklist though, but we have certain things that we follow very strictly, right? But first of all, the acquisitions that we have done, or the kind of that we might be doing in future, which we are in discussion, these are smaller acquisitions, not large companies coming together. So the important thing for us in that case is the founders' mentality, people who are the founders of those companies, how well we can gel with them, right? So there are a few governing rules that we look into that. Number one, as a principal, can I report to that guy or not, right? So that defines whether I can work with that person, the person is good enough, my team would be able to collaborate, coordinate, and so on, right? So can the person become my manager, right? That defines first principle. Second is that, is the person here to make money and get out of the company, or is the person here to build this with us for next 5 years, right? So all the acquisitions you will see, all the people are with us, right? No one has left so far, right? There's only one company where we acquired, and the deal was that no one stays back, because we wanted only the technology of that company. Other than that, that was the principle that we followed. Third is, it's not only me working with that person, right, who is coming in. It's also me with my team, which is existing. Let's say we acquire a new company, and there are already 5 companies we have acquired, and they're part of the company now, leadership and so on. Can everyone work with that person or not? So we also allow them to meet each other and give us a feedback that, hey, I can work with this person or not, right? Then we also believe that incentive structure is very important. While
Right.
at emotional level, personal level, you are aligned, are you also aligned at the incentive level? Are you aligned with the goals, right? What's in for me, right? That's an answer that we like to have. Fifth is that we give full ownership and accountability to the individual. So we don't make an employee after they join us. They are still the founders, they are still running the business, and we treat them like that only. Not like me sitting as a boss of that guy and saying, hey, you have to do these three things. Of course, there are certain decisions that I have to take at the company level, and everyone has to abide by that because of company goals. So that becomes their goal, but they run it on a day-to-day operation with the KPIs which are aligned, right? We believe they understand their team better. They understand their culture better, especially in cross-border. The culture of Indonesia is very different than Malaysia or Singapore or India. I cannot go and do a bossy nature and say, this is what you have to do. We have to understand the culture. So we trust the guys. What we also look at is that slowly can we move entire technology, administrative, support system into one, right? Because you can't have all the companies acquired, but then the companies are all different and there is no leverage that you're getting. So the important thing is that if the two companies are coming together, what is that you're producing out of it, right? So those things become crucial. We have now a checklist that we have defined as part of our any acquisition. Everything, what should be done, what is the timeline, how do we engage. There are softer things. For example, we are here in India, we do an all-its meeting, right? And we forget about the person who is there, who is speaking in Bahasa, right? Language becomes, might be I do all-its meeting at 6 o'clock in the evening because this is my culture of doing in India. But for them, it is 8:30 in the evening, and am I thinking about them or not, right? So there are very smaller things that you have to also keep in your checklist, and not only business KPIs, because business KPIs, I'm 100% sure you will achieve it, because that's the reason you have, first of all, got into the acquisition, right? It's the other things that will make it successful or derail it. And that's where we focus entirely, which are more human, process, culture, value. We send a message here saying Happy Diwali, but let's say in Indonesia, it's Eid is the biggest festival. How are we celebrating it, right? Things like that. So everything becomes absolutely important. And me as a person, as a leader, we have to also adapt to that situation dramatically and not leave it that everyone has to follow me. I have to follow them as we go along the journey.
No, that's a great point. You did mention about, you already answered my next question, which is, founder retention post acquisition. And you said all of them have continued to be part of, this, the larger setup. Now, when it again comes to, you said there were small acquisitions, but did any of these, beyond the founders, have had employee ESOPs, which you had to bring it into your company, or, so all of that had to be done, right?
Yes.
Any things there to learn for a young founder who's trying to look at making an acquisition, especially when it comes to this, because now the vision has become a lot more grandiose for that company as well, right? They would have probably thought.
What we did, Satish, is that when we acquired the company, we kept the ESOP in that company structure only. On day one, we defined what would be the buyout of those ESOPs. So for founders and investors, we did buyout plus swap. For those ESOPs, we did only a buyout, because swap and all will become more complicated for them on how they hold the equity here. And we said, okay, this is a step by step. We will start buying that out, right? So that was a commitment given on day one. And then we also said, okay, if you're doing something more, you will get more ESOPs as you go, because, and then we divide into two parts. For some executives, we said you will get at the corporate level, which is at BetterPlace level. So they also get the ESOP, for example, the founders, some of the key employees and so on. For others, we created a pool at the beginning, and the pool we kept it, and from that pool we give it to the existing, let's say, all the other employees of the organization. And again, same way we keep buying from them as part of their vesting period.
Fantastic. Any stories of any of the founders that you acquired has gone on to take a much larger role than what they came with in the merged organization now?
Yeah, so just recently, Saurav Chawla, we promoted as co-founder of BetterPlace. He
Wow,
came with
nice.
OKGo. Now he has been elevated just from June 1st. He has taken an elevated role, and he will take, I cannot disclose everything, but he will take more responsibilities within the organization. My colleagues in Indonesia and Jakarta also, they have started taking a bit more expanded role. One of the co-founders of company in Malaysia, Troopers, we have elevated the person as the head of marketing for the entire group now. So he's not only doing part of the company, but he's doing for the entire group. Another guy who is part of My Robin that we acquired in Indonesia, he is now leading a lot of initiatives on AI as well. So there are roles that we have defined.
How has it changed your own role? Has it given you a little more time to do, more experimental things? Has anything changed for you as your day-to-day activities are concerned?
I think I was happier doing what I was doing 11 years back as the new startup guy, focusing on coding, writing code myself, and then going to the customer and with that all the excitement of an engineer showing that code and the solution to sell it, right? But today it's largely investors, new fund, also a lot of KPIs that we have to look into, reviews with every organization. But where I try to spend most of my time is largely with large accounts, because I still believe the only dehydration that we keep getting in our journey, or the fuel, is the customer success, right? So I spend a lot of time with customers. Every week, at least half of the week I spend with customers, meeting different customer, existing, new, potential partners, going out. And some part of that also is with respect to the products that we are building for the customers, right? Because I think at the end of the day, if you lose touch with that, then you have lost the entire ecosystem. So that's where I spend most of my time. In last days, actually more time is going into bankers meeting and all those things that you need to do. But hopefully that will reduce. Hopefully it will reduce. I don't think so, but then I want to do more of product and customers.
Fantastic. This is such a fabulous discussion, Pravin. I can keep going on and on. But I think we've covered a whole lot of topics. I really wish all the success as soon as you list. And I'm sure your role as a listed company CEO now, you probably have to brace for a completely different life than a startup CEO. And I really wish everything turns out great. And as a retail investor, I'm looking forward to participate whenever you guys, list. And this has been fabulous. Thank you so much, Pravin.
Lovely speaking to you, Satish, and I was positively impressed with the kind of questions you asked. It's very interesting. Thank you so much for those.